Bit of a view there. Hopefully the camera's not angled off to the source of light too much, otherwise it'd be shitty exposure. But anyway, I've been clearing land for the past few days at home. It's a pile of work, and I broke my smaller chainsaw, so I've been slinging this great big falling saw around. Burning branches and shit. But anyway, there's been no shortage of interesting emails coming in, right? Informative emails. Thank God there's a shit pile of people out there that actually care about what's going on the planet today, because it's getting worse and worse. Where am I today? So that, I'm gonna call that a hill off to your left. And yesterday evening I was on the other side of that hill, the next valley over, coming up from that left drain. Then straight back that way behind me, if you go as the crow flies too, probably over top of the final one you can see is where that Nemint Lake is. And I have had a lot of people email in about fishing at Nemint Lake and being freaked out at the north end, I guess it would be, or the west end. West end probably. But I'm gonna go back there. I got a couple kayaks now. I'm gonna go back there and snoop around here fairly soon. I want to find that cabin. I want to find both those cabins that I went to when I was a little kid. Now anyway, before I get off on a few different topics, which is easy to do, I'm going to get some more voices heard because they're piling in. And every single person needs to be heard. Now listen to this. I haven't proofread anything, obviously. Never do. No time. Alright, but listen to this. One experience as a little girl. Hi, I enjoy hearing the experiences you and others have shared regarding the outdoors and wildlife, and love seeing the places you haunt and hunt. I was raised in Washington State and had parents who loved the mountains too, who did a lot of camping, and I was especially fortunate to have a campfire girls leader who had us in the woods a lot in the summer also. I was raised in Ellensburg, which is a 30-minute drive from Great Primitive Camping. We don't have camping labeled as primitive camping here in Canada, so I'm not quite certain. I'm not up to speed of what that is. Maybe somebody should write into me sometime what the different labels of camping flavors are and what that includes. I spent a great deal of time at the lake. Lake Cachis. Sounds like Cachis, okay? Lake Cachis. Lake Wenatchee and Lake Chelan. My dad and two of his brothers went deer hunting every season and took us all for Sunday drives and picnics, just loving the outdoors. He was an architect but preferred working with his hands and worked construction on 5 of the dams in the Columbia River and at least one freeway overpass. When I was about 8, 1963, Mom fried chicken and we went to see Diablo Dam on what is now the North Cascades Highway. There were 5 of us kids, I'm the second oldest, and I remember there being a picnic table on the side of the road and a scenic lookout. We were getting ready to eat and Dad bought us all Butterfinger candy bars. My youngest brother, 3, was upset because he didn't like Butterfinger. Alright, I'm going to move the camera. I can see the sun glaring off here. I'm at a bad angle now. Clouds breaking. I'm going to move the camera to make sure I don't screw this up. And I won't be able to read this properly unless I move the camera. All of a sudden, there were 3 Bigfoot. 2 ran away while still a little distant from us, but one kept coming up the hill and stood there looking at us. We were ushered quickly back into the car, but my brother left his candy bar on the log parking barrier as a gift before getting in the car. And kneeling in the back seat, we saw the Bigfoot get it. Holy shit. Unfortunately, he got the picnic basket and all the chicken too. My mom said it was a bear, not believing her own eyes, but my dad and his brothers went back up the next day and came back with the chewed up wrapper and gave it to my brother, and he still has it. When I was about 9, I was camping with my campfire group at Lake Cachis and got up before anyone else. It was just getting lighted up to sea, and I sat on a rock on the lake's edge. The water was so calm, really beautiful. The mountains rise fairly steeply on the eastern side across the water from where we were. I heard this loud, deep-chested whoop, whoop, coming from across the lake, and then a reply from somewhere farther away in the north. I remember marveling how loud it was, but being a kid, I thought it was a whooping crane in the water, and mountains just amplified the sound. In about 1979, my now ex-husband and I went to the same lake in April. We lived on Snoqualmie Pass and would take our little Chevy four-wheel drive pickup everywhere it would go in those mountains. That was a warm, early spring day, long before any campers were in the campground. Spent several hours just hiking and ended up on a cliff overlooking the lake. We were throwing rocks, trying to hit big boulders below us, and probably making a little noise. We were leaving to go home, slowly driving along the narrow campground roads when we passed by a small outbuilding, perhaps a shed for machinery, when something leapt or ran about 3 feet directly in front of the pickup truck. From the shed to the road was about 10 feet, and on the other side of the road, maybe 2 feet, were trees and thick bushes. The road was barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other, so maybe a total distance of about 25 to 30 feet. This thing was such a blur that I really only saw its rear end as it disappeared into the bushes. In my mind, I said grizzly bear, but it was more red and had no tail. All 4 feet went into the bushes at once, so I didn't get to see its feet, but the back end was as big as a Clydesdale's. I knew it wasn't a black bear, it was way too big. Running on all 4s, it was taller than the hood of our Chevy pickup. Chevy Love pickup, remember those? Much later, I remembered that day and realized that we don't have grizzly bears that far down in Washington State, and a bear would have stayed hidden or found another way around us. It was like whatever it was looking to play with us. Another time we took the pickup to Lake Chelan. Oh, sorry, something's in my eyeball. We would just throw the sleeping bags in the back with a cooler and go to sleep in the back of the truck. We ended up on a small cliff on a small waterfall that dropped about 30 feet, very secluded. The little road made a sharp wind around a steep hill that ended at the waterfall, with enough room to turn the truck around. There was a barbecue grill, so was an established place to camp, but only really room for about 2 cars. We backed up to the cliff, had the stream on one side, front facing the mountain, back to the cliff, and the road on the other side. The only way for anyone to get to where we were was to come up the cliff or the road or come down the mountain. We ate, and it was dark, so I got in the sleeping bag to watch the stars. He pointed out to me that there were no forest noises, not even bugs. It was creepy. We weren't there long until we heard what sounded like something very heavy. An elk came to mind, stepping on and snapping a large dry branch and then crushing it underfoot, like purposely. Laying in the bed of the truck, you can really only see straight up, unless you sit up, and it was quite dark, so I doubt we could have seen anything if we did, but I sure wasn't going to. I barely whispered, "Do you have your gun?" And he barely whispered back to me, "Yes." But he really didn't seem too confident about it. I was scared out of my wits. Yes, Bigfoot was on my mind, and so was the fact it was my time of the month. I have no idea how I fell asleep, but very likely fainted. The next thing I knew, it was barely light enough to see, and he was waking me up so we could get out of there. He was awake all night, but didn't want to talk about it. Finally, I'm only mentioning this one because I've never experienced anything like it before. First, I lived alone most of my life for a spring to fall. First, I lived alone most of my life, and for a spring to fall in a cabin in Denny Creek on Snoqualmie Pass with no one around. I walked for 4 years in the wee hours of the morning to and from work. Anywhere just over a mile to 5 miles in all weather. I did a lot of hiking and refused to let anything scare me. But we lived in Enumclaw, Washington, 1978 for a year. One day I went for a walk to the outskirts of town. There's a pickle factory out there then, and in a bend in the lonely road there was a curious little grassy area that looked like a very small park, because there was a little swing set in the grass, and that was surrounded by thick bushes and trees. I sat on the swing, but instantly got this creepy feeling like I should leave. I tried to shove it out of my mind, but it became so strong I couldn't ignore it. A serial killer came to mind. I left as quickly as I could without running. I can still feel the fear. I'm sorry this is so long, but we'll agree with the many, many others that no Bigfoot is real. All animals are smarter than we give them credit for, and you can never tell what mood or why they may act a certain way. There's lots of room for them, though we keep slowly taking up their space. I think it only right that people are made aware that they exist, and like any other thing in nature, we need to know how to behave in their territory. The world was made for man, and as good stewards of it, we should behave with knowledge and wisdom and a sense of duty to keep it healthy. Thank you for passing on your experiences and those of others, which can help us to do that. Please, no name. You got it. Let me check the beginning. Make sure you didn't share your name. Perfect. There's another one. Another member of the Club of No Return. And I'm curious to know what your boyfriend was troubled about that night in the box of pickup truck. And he didn't sleep at all. And he didn't want to talk about it. I wonder if that thing had a little peek at him over the edge of the pickup truck and he does not want to talk about it. Probably a good chance of that, isn't it? Thanks for sending that in. It's another one. And here comes another one. It's titled My Experience. Dear Steve, thank you for your channel. I've been a follower for quite some time now. Not sure how long exactly, but what you're doing is the right thing to do. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. My experience happened almost 50 years ago when I was only 6 years old, which would be 1973. I've never spoken of this, never. You're not the only one. We've got a lot of people stating the same lately. Coming forward, that's good. My papa and grandma moved to Ogden, Utah in 1971. My papa was a retired school principal and he took a job at the Theocles Clearfield Job Corps Center through a longtime hunting friend. I went to visit every summer from the time I was 5 until I was 8, and then they moved back to Ohio. The house they lived, I was at the foot of Mount Ogden in the Wasatch Range. And on most weekends, my papa and I would go up the mountain. He was an avid outdoorsman, and he was passing this along to me. One weekend, we hiked to a waterfall in a canyon that at the time was quite secluded and hard to get to. We made the waterfall around 2 in the afternoon, had a lunch that we brought, and enjoyed the scenery. We were the only ones there. When we started back, the shadows were getting longer, but still daylight. I should say that the hike in took about 4 to 5 hours with rests along the way. As we got down closer to home, there was a road with a runoff canal that ran alongside. My papa explained that the canals channeled snowmelt down from higher elevations for irrigation. From one side of the canal to the other was about 12 feet at the top. As we were walking along the road, I could hear something walking in the scrub alongside of us, up the mountain to our left. Heavy walking and the sound of sticks breaking and trees being pushed out of the way. Whatever it was not trying to be quiet. I saw my papa turn his head and stop for a second, and then he said, "Let's get going, Scotty." My name is Scott. And he picked up the pace. I didn't say anything. I just started moving faster. After a minute, I didn't hear the sounds again. We continued for about 1/8 of a mile when I turned and looked back, and there by the side of the road, on the same side of the canal as us, stood a large, hairy man. The hair was dark reddish brown. I can't really say how tall, but taller than Papa, and he was 6'1". It was staring at us, not moving. I turned back towards the way we were going so as not to trip and fall, and then looked back again. When I did, it turned and stepped across the top of the canal with little effort and went back into the scrub. Papa and I never spoke of this. And there were several weeks before we went up the mountain, but we never went back to the waterfall. End of story. Wow. I wonder if you, be curious to know if you actually told your grandpa what you saw. And I'll bet, wouldn't matter who you were, how old you were, you see one of those things and it is tattooed in your memory. Tattooed for the rest of your life, and you probably don't stop thinking about it much. Like, I wonder how often people think about their experience in their lifetime, their average day. I know for me, I mean, it's tough to go more than a couple days max without thinking about it some way or other. It's just not possible. It's kind of weird. It doesn't matter where you go, like in places where I am right now, or for me driving the length of BC, I'm constantly looking. You can't stop yourself. You cannot stop yourself from constantly looking. Not like a paranoid look, but you're driving along and you can't help but double take at something large and dark off in the distance. You just can't stop yourself. Pretty interesting. 6 years old, remembers it vividly. Thanks for that email, man. Appreciate it. One experience that gave me the chills is the title of this one. Hi, Steve. Thank you for doing what you do. I'll try to keep this succinct. I know you get quite a large amount of email. A few years back, I went up a mountainside near Cougar, Washington, ahead of my daughter and son-in-law to see if I couldn't flush a nice buck into their sights. I didn't have my license that year, so I wasn't actively hunting and still wanted to do what I could. It was both uneventful and unfruitful until I started working my way back down. I get chills even now thinking about it. I have really solid skills when it comes to listening to my instincts. I'm intuitive to the point that my fight or flight notions take precedence over all things. Good for you. I love hearing that. And on my way back, I became aware that everything stopped. No noises, no wind in the treetops. Even my footprints felt muted, for more so than my careful foot placement. The air didn't even move and felt dead, cloying, heavy. I never go anywhere unarmed, so without me even thinking about it, I drew my Beretta and put my back to a large Douglas fir. My mind was intensely focused on surviving, but I didn't panic. I wanted to run, my breathing was shallow and fast, and realizing that, I worked to slow it down so that I could more easily hear what I needed to hear and not hyperventilate. I'm not sure how long I stood there. I have no memory of how long I was against that tree. My thoughts centered around a big cat. At the time, I believed I was being stalked by a cougar. After hearing the kids, I was able to peel myself from off of the tree, and after scanning the ferns, undergrowth, and nearby trees, I started to make my way towards them. On reflection, I don't believe a cat was hunting me. A cat is a natural part of this world and doesn't have the supernatural influence on it that would cause what I experienced. I have never spotted nor heard anything. I still do not know what is the cause of my primal reaction, but it happened, and I absolutely trust my instincts. I shared my experience with the kids, but not in detail. My son-in-law must have picked up on my unease, though. It wasn't too long after that when he shared his own experience while bow hunting. He was alone. He was along a creek and had multiple rocks fly over him and hit the water to his left and downhill. I'm convinced. I was always skeptical, but I am no longer. Thank you, Todd Shrell, Woodland, Washington. Todd, thank you, man. That bow hunting experience with your son-in-law sounds familiar. It's almost like he possibly wrote in and told us about it. That sounds really familiar. Might have to move again. This bent over branch is going right up my ass. And it's not feeling too good. What do you say about that one? Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club of no returns, but all you can say. And another and another. All right, I'm gonna move this camera again and keep going. Get a little more comfortable. There we go. How'd I do it? Slight breeze in my back. Hopefully it's not licking that microphone too bad. You guys got a good view behind me, and I got a good view behind you guys. Big timber line up there. Now, on with it. Experience with Bigfoot is the title of this one. Steve, I'm 60 years old. I grew up in the Rocky Mountains. I've had some encounters with these creatures. Let me give you my very unscientific views on them. Number one, they are humanoid. Number two, they are not born on in this world/planet, and they do not die on this planet/world. Therefore, no carcass will ever be found/collected. All right? Number three, they are extremely powerful and not just physically. Number four, they can be both benign and dangerous. Very individual. Number five, their physical abilities and their cognitive abilities are far superior to ours. Number six, all animals in this world are very physically afraid of these creatures, including people. Number seven, they arrive in our world through portals that are water, i.e. creeks or swamps. You can blow this off or not, your choice. I now live in a large city, and I have come to the conclusion that it is partly because I am avoiding any further contact with these beings. I was a packer, a wrangler, a guide, and a backcountry hunter/camper for years. They haunt my dreams. Cheers, Mike. All right, short, straight to the point, and somewhat vague, Mike. You got my attention, though. If you want to If you want to write back and share what you experienced with everybody, I'll share it. I'm curious, especially if you're a guide and a packer, wrangler. I mean, that's right up my alley, right? And some bold statements. Bold statements. You know, they're not from this world, but yet they have human DNA in their bodies. So how does that come about, right? What does that say about us? As we fill in our puzzles. Title, thanks for sounding in, Mike. And don't be shy if you want to email in some of your experiences, all right? Because I want to hear about them. Experiences. Title this one. Hi, I'm Dolene Whitfield, and I'm a 54-year-old mother of 3. The strange thing is that my 2 sons are avid hunters and fishermen, and neither have had any experiences like the ones you talk about. My daughter, although has. She's 33 years old, had her first experience about 4 years ago, and that is pretty much what this email is about. I myself have no profound story to tell, but I felt a need to share this with others. When my daughter had her first experience, she shared it with us, and we all kind of laughed and brushed it off. Holly has always had a way about her. She has a spirit about her that just draws people to her. She's a beautiful girl inside and out. Her brothers, one older, one younger, found a lot of enjoyment in giving her a hard time. For years while they were growing up, she had always believed in UFOs, that sort of thing, but never mentioned much about Bigfoot situation until she did. She had told me about the yells she would hear that was unexplainable. I just took it in. Knowing Holly, it was just something you have to do sometimes. You know when you want someone to see or hear something and it never happens when you want it to, until one night I was leaving her house and I heard it for myself. I knew it was something normal. I then started thinking back on all she had shared with me, the calls, the figures in the woods, the structures with the trees, and I realized this was all before a lot of these YouTube channels were even started. She had been telling the truth. The main reason for this email is this. For all the parents out there and friends, please don't disregard what the people you love are telling you. Open your heart and your mind and don't be afraid. Fear only comes from the unknown. So make it something you know. Listen, I have felt very ashamed because I always consider myself to be a mother who stayed aware. They are still our children and friends no matter how old they are. Possibilities are endless. Thank you for letting me share. Dolene, thank you for sharing. I'm pretty sure that a lot of us needed to hear that. Without a doubt. Possibly. I don't know how many people are on this channel that... Well, you know what? There's actually a handful of people that follow this channel that just get annoyed by it and annoyed by me. Actually, the point, it's funny how many people actually come onto this channel and label me as their enemy and have to email me about it, how terrible I am. So, maybe these people do need to hear what you had to say. Maybe there is a lot of people following this channel that do need to hear what you just had to say. Let's hope so, because your words will definitely make a difference for someone, without a doubt. I'm glad you listened to your daughter. It's funny how many people shrug it off, right? A friend of mine, I kind of gave him shit. His son's seen these things twice and it really messed him up and he laughed at him. And I gave him shit for it. I said, listen, dude, he's your son. If he can't be safe with you, what does he have? Right? Nothing. You can't be safe sharing with your family. You got nothing. All right. What else do we got here? This is titled Bigfoot Story. Hello, Steve. First of all, I want to say I am new to following your channel. The stories are great, and thank you for making it okay to talk about such a crazy topic. No problem. My name is JT, and you may feel free to say my name or what part of New York this happened in, but please don't give out any addresses because it's not my property. All right. Well, hopefully you didn't write it down then. Friends of mine own it. We are like family. I'm a 47-year-old man that has a great job, house, and family. I'll try to keep it short. The only problem is there's so much to say. Even the short version is going to be kind of long. It was about 20 years ago in upstate New York, in the town of East Durham, not far from Hunter Mountain Ski Resort. Now, my buddy's property is about 12 acres bordering a very large amount of state acres. If you would like to tell this story, feel free to do so. If not, that's okay too, as long as you read it. That's what matters to me, considering you're the one that has made me tell my story. Well, correction, our story. Considering I wasn't alone. Now, about 20 years ago, we used to go up every weekend to my buddy's cabin. We'd ride quads, go-karts. There were about 8 of us, ranging from all ages, 14 to 29. It didn't matter to us. If you can ride hard in the woods, you can come. That is our rule. Every time when it would start getting dark, we would always head back from this fire tower that was in the middle of nowhere because you didn't want to be out there come dark. This land had lots of wildlife, deer, bear, deer, foxes, coy wolf, coyotes, and even once in a while a wandering moose. Many times out there in the dark, we would hear all animals, and it really never got our attention. We had no worries because the sound of our quads normally scared off any animals, even very large black bears. So, late night after dinner by the fire, put me and 2 of the other oldest, we would go for a ride up the mountain to this old cemetery in the middle of nowhere to drink beers and smoke a little weed. After all, we were young and dumb. I believe that's the old saying, right? We were up the cemetery doing a thing. We have no lights with us, no guns, no nothing but beer, weed, and our quads. We were in the cemetery, which is about 40 by 80 feet in diameter. We drank about 3 beers apiece so far and proceeded to roll our joints using the dim lights that our quads provided. We're pretty loud. We're joking, we're yelling, we're having a good old time so far. About 40 minutes have passed, and it was at that time the only tree in the middle of the cemetery, which was a massive oak tree, I know this because of the amount of acorns that were littered in the cemetery floor beneath it, began to shake. Branches falling and breaking, scaring us half to death. We all ran to a different corner in the cemetery, trying to take cover. The first thought that came to my mind was a bear. My buddy to the right of me screams, "Bear, bear, it's a damn bear," while running to the corner of the cemetery. I trip over a tombstone, fell flat on my face, cutting my forehead on a rock. Oh, that sucks. Then I heard the most terrifying sound anyone can hear. At that moment, a gigantic thud. Afraid to turn around, my other 2 buddies, which I think are gone because I'm not hearing a sound from anything, but what landed right behind me, it was a rumble that was so deep, it made every hair on my body stand, and just at that time, I pissed my pants. Yes, that's right, Steve, I literally pissed my pants. As I hear footsteps getting closer to me, I get on my knees and began to pray. I'm talking softly to myself, not knowing what to do next. The rumbling stopped, and then I heard, which I assumed was a very low growl. My buddy to the left, who happened to be the oldest, he's about 29 years in age, he said to me very softly and slowly, "Do not move, do not move, do not turn around." Not knowing what to do and scared half to death and pants full of piss, I slowly turned my head over my left shoulder while still on my knees in a praying position, not facing what's behind me. At that time, I see a figure, only half of it, because my head does not turn like an owl's, and I'm staring at its knees. Not trying to look up, I finally get to his torso, which, not for nothing, had to be about 65-inch waist. At that time, I was a young man at 6'1", 315 pounds of solid muscle. I myself had a 36-inch waist. This thing's waistline dwarfed mine. Finally, while trying to turn around, I stumble to the right and I fall on my butt, putting both elbows on the ground behind me, now staring straight up at this thing. And I say thing because now half of its body is in the headlights of my quad and the other half in complete darkness. And he starts growling once again. I wasn't sure if its aggression was towards me, or he was scared to death from the quads running, or he felt outnumbered. But believe you me, he was not the one that had to worry at that moment. Terrified for my life, not knowing what's going to happen next, I stayed there for about 5 minutes, but it seemed like an eternity. 5 minutes in wildlife time is eternity. Brian, are you curious about what 5 minutes is like in a terror situation? Mark your watch and time 5 minutes and pretend you're outside of a shark cage and there's a great white right there for 5 minutes. Time it. That's a lifetime. 30 seconds is a long time in wildlife encounter time. Any encounter time. I'm not saying this is wildlife. Finally, he steps fully into the light. This massive being, and I say being because it resembled a man covered in thick hair. It's about 4 times the size of Hulk Hogan in his prime. The sheer power and strength that is clearly visible in this being's body structure was absolutely terrifying. Yet it's amazing, terrifying yet amazing, is like the most beautiful painted portrait I've ever seen in your life. He was absolutely spectacular. As my mind began to race, I'm noticing I'm losing my fear of this being. Now I've noticed the longer I stared at this being in the eye, the more aggressive and agitated he became. So I put my head down, got on both knees, and bowed in front of him as if saying, "You're the man, I give up." After about a minute or two, his growling subsided and turned into a couple of faint grunts. He took about 5 steps back, looked at both of my friends as if to say, "I could break you 2 in half easily." Then he focused his attention back on me. At that time, I stood up slowly, went towards my quad, grabbed my backpack, opened it, and at that moment, he rushed me, grabbed the front of my Suzuki King Quad that has over 700 cc's and flipped it upside down like it was a toy. I guess the bright headlights were pissing it off. I sat on the wall. He took 2 steps towards me. I quickly remembered if I get down on my knees, he will calm down, so that's what I did. And he backed off once again, made 4 or 5 light grunting sounds, and that's when I heard tree branches snap to the right of us. That's right, Steve, he wasn't alone. As we heard the footsteps to the right of us getting further and further away, as if to say, "I have my eyes on these 3, go now to the others," who were close by, he kept us in check. I stood up once again, 6 foot, 1 solid muscle, over 300 pounds. He looked at me as if he was impressed and also worried about my size. Just at this time, I noticed a smell. This whole time, I have not smelled it. Everyone always says how bad they smell. I wouldn't call it a bad smell. It was definitely something I'd never smelled before. Or I can't describe it. It was nothing like a skunk or a wet dog. The closest thing I could say is maybe rotten meat. His fur was very thick, about 2 inches long, and his nose was about 3 inches wide, and his chin was so incredibly muscular. His teeth were big and square, kind of yellowish in color. He did not have canines there. Where the canines should be was a little point, not much different than the other teeth in his mouth. I noticed the size of his hands, which I could only describe them shaped like a human's, but 4 times the size of a male gorilla's. Well, I never looked at him from the knees down. I don't know what his feet look like. I never saw him from the knees down. This magnificent being is a spectacular specimen of nature. These beings should be protected. He did not harm any of us, even though he could have very easily. And no one would have ever known what happened to us. He was protecting his own, watching us until they were gone. He then looked at me, turned to his buddies. He then looked at me, turned to my buddies, then right back at me. He started moving towards the side of the cemetery where his family members left from and headed into the darkness of the night. My buddies and I are still in shock over what just happened. We didn't say a word to each other, just kept drinking beers, looking the direction he left. From wondering if he was coming back, no one spoke, not even to make fun of the fact that I'd pissed my pants. After 2 hours, we left. The next morning, no one said a word to each other, and everyone else noticed. Later that day, the 3 of us went back to the cemetery. I guess you could say to see if what we experienced really happened. When we had arrived at the cemetery, clear as day, all the broken branches were still there, my quad flipped over, and still at the bottom of the hill. This being had to have been 9 to 10 feet tall, 5 to 6 feet wide at the shoulders. He must have weighed in at 700 or 800 pounds. Till that day, I have never returned to that cemetery, nor have I gone to my buddy's cabin again. No doubt. Shit. He always says that the signs are there, that they are there. You just need to know what to look for. Please not take my lack of ability to write a story, as I'm doing the best I can to describe what we had experienced. This is a beautiful being, extremely massive. This is a beautiful, beautiful being. Extremely massive, extremely impressive. Till this day, I think about him. I can't help but smile and just be amazed at how spectacular he really was. I wish him and his family the best of luck. I know this may sound crazy or weird. No one should ever want to harm one of these beings. And I call him a being because he resembled us so much, I just can't put it into words. I never heard knocking, I never heard yelling, I never heard rocks clinking together, I never heard screaming. We did not even know he was there. We heard nothing. Thank you for your time, Steve, and if you share this story, that's fine. With me, please leave names out, even though I think I only gave you mine. You know what, Steve? F that, you can use my name. Thank you so much for your time in reading this. Hopefully one day the government will acknowledge that these magnificent beings are people too, with families, and put them on the endangered species list. And stop worrying about bankrupting the lumber industry and protect their habitat from being destroyed, because they are on the move. They are traveling south, right into backyards, suburban communities, and more people are coming into contact with these beings every day. Thank you, Steve. Keep fighting the good fight. JTM. All right, man. Holy shit. Oh my God. That is basically what I would consider your absolute worst nightmare experience. Probably only next to getting picked up and dragged away or getting the shit whipped out of you from one of these things. That's an incredible, shit-eating, extremely terrifying experience for any human being on the face of the planet today. Picture it, you guys. Were you picturing yourselves being there in front of that thing? The way he just described it? Imagine that. Stand up, go for your backpack, and the thing runs over and flips your quad upside down like it was a Tonka toy. Probably thought you were going to pull a piece out of your backpack. I'm guessing. Well, for sure he was. And the same old description. Looking absolutely human, right? But not quite. Crazy. As I'm looking on the skyline, the timberline, top of this mountain. I'm feeling a bit of a breeze in my back. I don't know if it's hitting the camera or not. I don't feel like going home yet, so I think I'm going to move the camera to ensure there is no wind hitting that microphone, because I can't stand that sound when it does it. And I'm going to get some more voices heard while I'm up here. I'm going to make sure every single frickin' person gets heard, no matter what. Eventually, I will. I know I'm getting a good dent in it. This ought to do it. I don't think there's any wind hitting the camera right here. And a quick question to the previous emailer. I'd be interested to know if you still talk to all your buddies, your other two buddies who are there, and if they follow this channel, or if they want nothing to do with that memory. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to see each one of you ever again to avoid having to relive that experience, or what. I'd be curious to know what happened to your two friends after that. The aftermath, right? The aftermath's usually hard for a lot of people to deal with. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't ever want to face that fact that they witnessed that ever again, you know? All right, here we go. This is titled Jacarilla Photo. Dear Steve Isdall, I've written you a couple of times by email over the past year. I appreciate your YouTube channel, the straightforward content, your videos, your traditional American independent ethic, your moral courage, your native intelligence, your bush smarts, your rants, your good humor, your integrity, and your respect for animals. And you are right. You may use my name, the names of the people I mention, and the places I mention as you see fit. You have my permission and the permission of the people I mentioned by name to do so, as I've discussed the matter with them. It's about this digital photo. Who? Two experienced Jacarilla Hikariha. Sorry, that's how it's pronounced. Hikaria Hikaria. Alright, this is how it's pronounced. Hikaria. Apache hunters. It's spelled Jicarilla. What? Not a bear. Apaches know bears. When? On or about November 1st, 2021 in broad daylight. Where? Hemish or Hemez. Spelt Jemez. Mountains, north central New Mexico. About 50 miles south-southeast of Dulce, near Cuba, in the Santa Fe National Forest. At least 10,000 feet above sea level. ASL. Why? Hunting bull elk. How? Cell camera. Alright, so those are all the details. I work and I live in the Jicarilla Apache Nation in far north central New Mexico. In Dulce, Dulce, D-U-L-C-E, population 2,700, just a stone's throw south of the Colorado border. For this Indian U.S. Health Service, IHS, Dulce is about 40 miles as the crow flies, due south of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Been here since early June this year. I get out around Dulce and the reservation making house calls and seeing patients, and these days, vaccinating folks with the different COVID-19 vaccinations, as they choose voluntarily, no mandates here. I'm 71 years old, originally from North Arkansas County, Arkansas, 45 years in the Army, Special Ops, and I ain't woke. We don't compel people to get vaccinated. No medical experimentation going on in the IHS, no matter what you've heard on CNN or MSNBC or any other 24-hour news channel. At any rate, I enjoy meeting and talking with the, oh my god, sorry, Hikuria. I gotta remember how to say that. Hikuria. With the Hikuria people, especially the elders. They are smart, honest, patriotic, spiritual, generous, courteous, and most have a rather sophisticated sense of humor, perhaps unique to their community. Since I've been watching your How to Hunt videos on YouTube this year, as I have the time, I ask the local folks, after we get acquainted and comfortable with each other, if they have ever seen or heard or otherwise encountered anything unusual or strange or interesting or scary in the bush or in the mountains around here. One day earlier this month, December 12th, I think, going about my usual public health duties in the community, I met Roland Chavez. We got to talking. Roland has worked full-time for the Tribal Fencing Authority for many years. He's out usually by himself in the most remote parts of the 800,000-acre, 12,500 square mile reservation year-round, inspecting, surveying, repairing, building, and otherwise maintaining fences on the tribal lands. He knows the reservation, and he is a hunter. He knows the bush, and he understands the indigenous fauna intimately. A good man for me to know. So, as is my wont, I asked Roland if he had ever seen or heard or otherwise encountered anything strange or frightening in the high bush on the reservation. Quote, "Well, I heard things and I felt things, but I never actually see anything," he said. "But my cousin and friend of his were hunting for bull elk down in the Hemish or the Hemez Mountains down around Cuba at the southern part of the reservation, 7,700 to 11,700 feet ASL last month, and they came across a creature they never saw before. They didn't know what to do." Quote, "My cousin's friend took a picture with his cell phone, and then the friend, just ran away. My cousin stood there looking at the creature, and the creature was looking at him. Then after a few minutes, or maybe a few seconds, the thing just turned around and walked away on two legs like a man. He, his cousin, said it was big and tall, at least 8 feet tall, probably more, and very thick, and very wide, and very hairy, long and thick, reddish brown. A ginger bear walking on its hind legs? No. Witnesses say, not a bear. Roland said that his cousin had sent him the photo by text and that he had it on his cell phone. I asked him to send it to me. No problem. He sent it to me by text. And here you have it. On Wednesday, the 29th of December, 2021, I phoned Roland in Dulce and asked his permission to share the photo and his story of it, with attribution, to share with you and others. I explained to Roland, in case he was unaware, that you were a big game hunting guide in British Columbia with a popular YouTube channel, with big game hunting and Sasquatch experience themes, and you share email messages of encounters and photos of identified creatures in the bush. Roland thought this is a good idea and encouraged me to do so, saying that he hoped that one of your viewers might see the photo and identify the creature in it. And so, the more people who saw the photo, the better. Roland also said that his cousin and his friend who took the photo would feel the same. Permission granted. All right. By the way, I would have written and sent the photo sooner, but I couldn't contact Roland until yesterday for his permission to do so. Seems he was out of town in San Diego at the U.S. Marine Corps Recruit Training Depot at Camp Pendleton, California, for the graduation of his son and nephew from USMC Boot Camp. Semper Fi. You gotta love those First Nations, American Indian, Alaska Native, Arctic Indian lads. They've been some of our most redoubtable Can-Am soldiers and Marines for over 100 years. Remember Francis Pegamagabo Wasoksing Ojibwa of Parry Sound, Ontario, Tommy Prince, Anishinaabe, Henry Norwest, Métis, John Sickok, Inuit, and the Navajo Marine radio operators, code talkers in the Pacific in World War II. Anyway, finally, I have downloaded a digital photo enhancement program, GNU, Image Manipulation Program, GIMP, onto my iMac with which to clarify the cell phone photo provided herewith. I will enhance and clarify the image as soon as I figure out how to use the GIMP software. Maybe then we can discern enough detail to determine what sort of creature, if any, is in the photo. Meanwhile, perhaps you or the other member of the community, more familiar with photo enhancement software, can clarify the picture. We shall see, or not. Thanks for reading, thanks for your videos. Joseph Glenn. P.S. Did I send you the story of the little Bigfoot from Moon Lake near Jonestown, Mississippi in the late 1960s? I meant to, I can't remember. A good story from a reliable source. And she is as tall as a tree and black as midnight and hotter than a $2 pistol. All right, here's the photo. I will. Obviously, I'm going to post this up for all you guys to have a look at. Looking at it, you can tell right away there's something there. It's a little fuzzy for me right now to look at on here. I can see a couple eyeballs, and it looks like a split forehead on it and nose. But we'll zoom it up and we'll have a look, and you guys can pick it apart, all right? Thanks again for sending that in. Appreciate it, man. Keep digging. I'm surprised you haven't heard more experiences from the people there. I'll bet they have a lot. All right, maybe I'll get one more. Oh, this looks like a long one, and I'm getting kind of tired. I'll save that for another time when I'm a little more fresh. Let me scroll down here, get somebody who's waiting a long time. All right, what do we got? This is titled Belgian Sasquatch. Dear Steve, it's me, John. I think you may remember me from that Bigfoot story from Luxembourg, southeast of Belgium. Boy, was that an experience, but it might be foggy in your memories. Anyhow, the same story included a slight mention of another story where I included some finding I made closer to where I live. That funny sounding name. Bokrijk, spoken in English as Borake. Borake? Bokrake. I suck at these pronunciations three-quarters of the time, don't I? Oh well, that's what you get for being in the bush more than not, I guess. In Limburg, Belgium, the greenest place in Belgium. I have some pictures you and your audience might find interesting, minding the fact that Belgium has no stories about Bigfoot, monkey-looking 6 to 12 feet tall creatures, but we do have wild men stories. Also legends and myths about wolf people. The loup-garou, I heard that one. Some type of werewolf. Also about witches, shapeshifters, fairies, little people, fauns, etc. Now, it's interesting to me that I also run across the same stuff most Sasquatch-related channels are talking about. Giant prints, structures that seem odd, X marks, but maybe that's all natural. The structures, I mean. But the prints, Once, I had even put some sort of fear in me, having to run out of the forest for some reason. I mean, but this is Belgium. Belgium is tiny. Mountains are only in the south, but I wouldn't really call them mountains. More giant, rocky, bushy hills. That being said, we have lots of open farmland still, beautiful forests and rivers and such. So, if Bigfoot visits or lives in Belgium as well, that means they are literally everywhere. I mean, again, Belgium, right? Who knew, huh? And I really want to believe that because what I saw in 91 or 92 in Luxembourg, which is south of Belgium, then I know what I'm seeing here must be related. I mean, I've never seen 18-inch print of no barefoot human foot ever, but you'll see in the pictures what I mean. Then there's my UFO story, also from 91. Belgium had a UFO wave that lasted 3 years, where military jet pilots and a colonel stated that these triangle and other shaped crafts flew and made turns at impossible speeds with no sounds whatsoever. One flew above our care one late night in October 92, and my mom still swears to this day that she once saw an alien-looking 7-feet-tall creature by the side of her bed. That my stepdad at the time ran to her upstairs and the creatures escaped, almost pushing my stepfather off the stairs, running into the bathroom and disappearing into what seemed to be into one of the 2 sinks in there. It still don't work this day, and plumbers can't tell the problem. That happened in 96, but I can tell all sorts of strange stories about my family. That's definitely a doozy, especially if the sink won't work. One time, my sister's ex-boyfriend told a story about this glass of beer that just moved from the table, smashing into the wall. And one time, my girl told who still lives with her parents, we've only been dating 2 years, and she lives in Holland, and I, well, you know, by now, Belgium. She told me she was alone in the house, no parents, and she heard noises in the kitchen and upstairs. And then at night, people were... Oh, sorry. I scrolled ahead by accident. People were walking on her stairs, but every time she went to look, nobody was there. Stuff like that. Like my grandma, her house man. Pfft, boy, oh boy. She had this one room full of puppets. I swear to God, I saw one move her eyes one day. That's kind of creepy. That still haunts me to this day. Well, not as much as seeing what I call a sheet ghost. Literally a sheet-looking ghost, like in some movie, and my grandma running after it to kick it out of her place with a frickin' broomstick. Like some witch, you know. Like every bro and sis I have has such a story. Maybe we were on drugs, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't smoking pot or doing crack when I was a kid, so... And not now either, LOL. Anyways, I hope this is not too long of an email. I have autism, so yeah, LOL. Wish you well, and sorry for Mr. Macaroni. Love your channel. Thanks for what you do. You're a good person, and the world needs more voices like you. Leaders that make leaders. And please, take a look at the picture. Haha. Cheers. Your buddy John Telemans. Haha, Telemans. Funny name when you try that in English. Well, my surname is John. A very English-sounding name. LOL. Okay, man. Gotcha. And here's all the shit you're finding in the woods. Okay, that log. The log going 90 degrees. That's a little odd. I guess not if it was snapped off from a tree above it, but yeah. You're seeing all sorts of things in the forest that could be attributed to natural causes, but then you see the print, and I can just make out the toes in that print, I think. But again, the odd thing with that print, and I've noted, alright, there's a couple logs that are really bizarre, for sure. The thing about the print, John, and for all you watching, is when you see a print shared like this, and that's just for me, when the entire ground is covered in pine needles and leaves, then all of a sudden there's just a bare area of dirt without pine needles and leaves on it, and it's a footprint. Well, that doesn't normally happen. You know, when anything's walking through the forest and the forest floor is covered in pine needles and leaves, the print goes on top of everything there. The foot doesn't go down, stick to all the leaves and pine needles and pick them up and carry them away on the bottom of the foot. You know what I mean? So, wasn't there, you were. And I believe you definitely seen something abnormal, and it sure sounds like you've got a lot of crazy frickin' stories. just that room full of puppets. Well, who would do that? That's just asking for trouble, isn't it? But anyway, I gotta get going. Get going before I start getting rocks tossed at me from up there. I'll give you guys a quick 360 again, alright? I'll show you where I am. And hopefully, I don't know what's going on the next couple days, but I know I gotta get out. I gotta get out in the real woods here pretty quick and get my fix as I normally need it. And to all you people who are diligent in digging up your own facts about what's going on today, thank God for every single one of you. And I appreciate every single one of you sending me those emails of what you were discovering and learning on your own. And I must admit, though, probably 99% of all of you who are sending me emails of information, I've already been aware of it so far. I haven't heard any surprises yet. But keep them coming, all right? And eventually I will get what you are finding. I will get it shared on the other channel to make sure everybody becomes more aware. All right? It's very important, believe it or not. Here I go. Talk to you guys shortly. All right, here's 360 where I am. As the crow flies, that's where Creepyville is over there, over top of those hills. So I'll go in a few days. And there you go.